What is it like to be different? Okay, so the question I'm giving you all is obviously vague. Actually, this question can in fact be associated to everyone as every individual is different. I am no special snowflake. None of us are special snowflakes. So why the question? To put it simply, I have scoliosis, which resulted in spinal fusion. Spinal fusion is when the spinal cord is fused with one or two metal rods so that it stays straight and the scoliosis, or whatever back problems you have, are fixed. Why did I not start this about scoliosis then? For fun, I guess. Though it is true that every life is different, I wanted to take my own spin on life by thinking of every question I've been asked and compiling them into a story for all of you to listen to. The very first question which comes to my mind is, will you ever get the rods out of your back? No. No, I will never get them out of me. They are just as permanent as I am in this little world called life. They will be with me until the day I die, and from there on. I may be buried with them. Who knows? I sure don't. This question, of course, is, as always, led to the next immediate question. Can you feel them? Yet again, this must sound boring. The answer is technically no. Most days I spend during my everyday life forgetting that they exist. They've been with me for 7 years now, and I honestly do not remember life without them too well. There are, of course, some days where my back aches and I can feel them attached to my bones, those cold winter days or rainy summers that make them grow heavy underneath my nerves and my muscles. That even though I do not remember them in my everyday life, they still manage to show up and remind me that they exist, and that they will forever exist. Which brings me to a point. A year or so after having the spinal fusion surgery, I was in the car with my father and my siblings. It was January, and the parking lot we were in was completely full. There was nowhere to park. Nowhere to park. Except for one space. The handicap space. My brother saw the space before anyone else, only to let out a remark along the lines of,
"Hey Dad, park there. Jackie's a cripple, so we can park there."
I am not a cripple. Nor do I need handicapped parking. Of course my brother was joking, but to a 13-year-old person learning to live with a change in her life, it definitely brought many ideas to my mind. And to a girl who grew up in an American society, I now ask you this. How many people have we seen in the media represented with scoliosis? There are two examples. Deanie, a story written by Judy Blume, and Dee Reynolds from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Dee is referred to as the aluminum monster throughout her show, thus being a negative impact to any child or person suffering from scoliosis. Deanie, on the other hand, is pressured by her mother to become a model, only to have her mother's dream fail when Deanie is given scoliosis. Basically, the representation, as with many types of people, is lacking in the media. There is no teenage girl widely spread throughout media to give hope to kids facing such a dark time in their lives. In fact, 7 years ago, I wish there was a character I knew about. On that October day in 2008, when I found out the news, I cried. I cried more than I had ever cried before at that point of time in my life. Everything, of course, turned out okay. But in some ways, it did not turn out okay. Most days, like I said, I forget that the metal rods are in my spine. Other days, I sometimes look in the mirror and notice that I am crooked. I am not normal. I am a monster, and no matter how much baggy clothing I wear, it will never change that. Some days I turn and trace the line down my back from my shoulders to my hips. Some days I just sit and cry knowing that it will always be there and that I cannot change it. I know it's a depressing thought to say, but it's a true thought. Which brings up another question that I was unaware of. Did you know that most people who undergo spinal fusion end up with an eating disorder and/or depression? I certainly did not know this, but it honestly makes so much sense. The first few weeks out of the hospital, I could not eat more than a handful of chips. I was taking so many medications that my body could not function, and I gained a high fever, among other things. By the time I went back to school, the day of Obama's inauguration, I was nothing but bones sitting in the back of the class as everyone cheered over our new president. From then onward, I have been particularly skinny. but that skinniness was something that I monitored during the first couple years after the surgery. I figured that I couldn't be both fat and unable to bend my back. That would be too much. I guess a lot of other people thought the same way as me if this question holds true. Another common question is, how much can you bend your back? I can move my neck, and I can sit down in chairs. That is it, basically. From my shoulders to my hips, there's titanium attached to my spine, and it cannot bend. I actually don't really remember what it is like to be able to bend my back, except for vague memories of doing somersaults on the plush 90s living room carpet. I miss being able to bend my back, though. Sometimes I try and touch my toes, and I cannot. Other times I realize that there's no point, and just stare at myself in the mirror. Since I sit and stare at myself so much, I must know a lot about my scoliosis. Like, do I know what caused this? Do I? I wish I knew exactly why I ended up like this. If I were to guess, I would say genetics must have played a huge part for me in particular. But in all reality, many doctors do not know exact causes of scoliosis. I say genetics for myself because my grandmother and my sister both have scoliosis. My grandmother had to get surgery back when she was 16 years old. Katie, my sister, had to wear the brace for a year or two, but that was about it. Her scoliosis gradually came and was caught early enough so that surgery was prevented. If my sister's scoliosis was caught, then why did I end up with spinal fusion? Why was my scoliosis not caught? To put it simply, at the beginning of August 2008, my spine was perfectly normal. But by halfway through the month, my spine had turned into a perfect S shape. There was no time to prevent it. On December 3rd, 2008, I was in Mass General Hospital at 6 a.m. My last meal was a burger from Friendly's at 6 p.m. the day before, and the next thing I knew, it was 11:59 p.m. on December 3rd, 2008. In one day, I had lost massive amounts of blood. I had become 4'11" after being 4'5" in one day. That one day led to 1 week learning how to walk again and watching I Love Lucy as I sucked on ice. During that week, the IVs constantly fell out of my tiny wrists and blood splurted everywhere. The nurses were never happy about that. Somehow, I had also gone from 90 pounds to 80 pounds in my stay at the hospital. On the last day, I was given a popsicle, and I rejoiced over the taste of fruity flavors gone for so long. I had lost a lot during that week. You can even lose something that you thought you would never forget, like walking. But how can you forget to walk? Walking is like riding a bicycle, and you can never forget it, right? Though that does hold true, it is not like walking in the past. It is like walking with a new body, that all of a sudden all of your weight is in your back and you are struggling to lift yourself against this new thing that is you. The first time the nurses made me get out of bed after 4 days, I instantly fell and crumpled to the floor. I could not take it. It was too much for me. It did take the rest of my stay just to get me to be able to learn to tolerate the rods and walk with them as if nothing had happened. As if the last few months, and especially that the last few weeks before it, had never happened. And even after that week passed, and months passed, a lot has happened. For instance, and yet another common question I get is, do you set off metal detectors all the time? No, I do not set off metal detectors in airports or anywhere really. This has always confused me because although the rods are underneath my nerves and muscles, the machine should detect it. Yet, they somehow do not stop me in lines at the airport because I guess they never see it. Despite this, I think that one day the alarm will go off because of my back, and that it will be terrifying. This is why I still carry a doctor's note with me whenever I go to the airport. It is just another change in my life. In Higashita's Why I Jump, he was asked if he could, would he change the way he was to be normal? In a weird way, I have also been asked that question. Would I never have gotten spinal fusion if I did not have to? Immediately, I would say yes. Which is, of course, a selfish thing to say and not very humble. But scoliosis is not something I grew up with. Scoliosis was thrusted into my life and gave me no chance whatsoever. I never knew someone that had spinal fusion all my life until going to Emerson and meeting another girl with it. The joy of meeting someone and not feeling isolated in your own little bubble felt great. People need people to help them and to understand them. There was no one to comfort you in isolation as you cried over why you were wrong and how you could not fit in. Your friends did not understand. How could they? All they could say to you is, "At least you're fixed now. It could be worse." Yes, I was fixed like a doll, but I was not a porcelain doll. I was sewn together like a rag. And yes, even though I am fixed, I can never see myself in the same way because of it. I'm different. I just wish that someone had told me through the media or through my life that being different was good. I've heard it now, but after 7 years, sometimes you are just too self-obsessed and curled up within your own mind to be able to digest the thought. That some days, you just want to rip out the titanium in your back and be free and normal like the people you see every day. But that's life, and I cannot change it.